The American Cotton Shippers Association, also known as ACSA, is a trade association primarily made up of cotton merchants. Founded in 1924, ACSA members manage the majority of the cotton trade, providing merchandising, delivery logistics, and risk management services to their customers. ACSA is grateful to Senators Cindy Hyde-Smith of Mississippi, Katie Britt of Alabama, Roger Marshall of Kansas, and John Boozman of Arkansas for introducing the Buying American Cotton Act of 2025, which will build structural demand for U.S. cotton. ACSA urges all cotton industry stakeholders to support this initiative by reaching out to your congressional delegation and requesting their support for this legislation.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Cotton Grower Magazine's Cotton Companion Podcast. I'm Jim Stedman, editor of Cotton Grower, and with me, as always, is my good friend and colleague, Beck Barnes. Well, Beck, cotton harvest is now on the radar screen, especially in parts of southern Texas where the pickers are already rolling. And across the entire cotton belt, USDA is currently reporting bolls set in more than 80% of the crop and open bolls in more than 20% of the crop. So it's just a matter of time before defoliation and any other pre-harvest field work begins.
Yeah, man, it's feeling a little harvesty out there. It's been here the past couple mornings in Memphis. It's been in the 70s through the lunch hour in the morning, which I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it after the weeks of humidity that we've had here. So yeah, it's feeling a little harvest weathery, but we know, in the back of my mind, Jim, I always think about there have been years where Ole Miss opens the season against Memphis on like Labor Day weekend, around Labor Day. And I just have this memory seared into my head of stepping into the Liberty Bowl here in Memphis and it just feeling like an oven, just, got to be 115 degrees radiating off that artificial turf there in the Liberty Bowl. So, yeah, I know that this is fool's autumn.
Yes.
That's you probably know the correct term.
Yeah, false fall right now.
False fall, yeah. So I know that there's more heat coming, but I'm not complaining right now.
No, we'll take it. We will definitely take the respite from the heat and humidity for a few days. But I just want to, again, as Beck knows, our latest edition of Cotton Grower Magazine, which is currently on press and will be headed to your mailbox here within the next couple of weeks. We focused on harvest preparation with information gleaned from 3 of our great extension cotton specialist friends. We want to keep that train of thought moving through this episode as we visit with Dr. Bill Robertson. He's a retired Arkansas cotton specialist who's now living life as a conservation agronomist from his home base in Bradford, Arkansas. Bill's been an active voice in cotton production for many years, and retirement, and I'm saying that with air quotes, has certainly not slowed him down. He always brings a unique perspective to any discussion. We're bringing him in today to get some of his thoughts, tips, suggestions, and probably a few anecdotes about harvest preparation. We're going to bring him on in just a couple minutes, so be sure to stay tuned for some pearls of wisdom and other thoughts.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear from Bill here. But Jim, in our last podcast, our last special guest, that was Stanley Culpepper, University of Georgia weed specialist. And we talked to him about the proposed EPA registration for 3 end-use dicamba products for over-the-top use in dicamba-tolerant cotton and dicamba-tolerant soybeans. Now, as part of the process, EPA set up a public comment period about the proposed registration, and that opportunity has now been extended to September 6th. I know we went back and forth on that a couple times with Stanley because there was a little bit of fuzzy confusion about when that would be extended to, but it has been extended to September 6th. So when the proposed registration was announced back on June 23, EPA expressed particular interest in feedback about several facets of the registration package, including some new temperature-dependent volatility mitigations, percent of field-treated restrictions, and any science-backed solutions to manage volatility. Now, if you want to make your voice heard, time is running out quickly. We have an article posted on our website, cottongrower.com, that provides more information and convenient links to the comment sites. And if you'd like more background, you'll also find a link to our podcast with Dr. Culpepper as he provides more insight into this proposed action. That's last week's podcast episode, or I should say 2 weeks ago's podcast episode.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, harvest time is coming soon to much of the cotton belt. Unless, of course, you're in southern Texas where cotton's already coming out of the field right now. But even in a somewhat down year like this one's been, there's still a lot to do to get ready. So let's open the doors to our virtual studio, welcome our longtime friend and self-proclaimed conservation agronomist, Bill Robertson, back to the Cotton Companion podcast. Bill, been a while since we've had a chance to visit, so welcome back.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk. I always love to talk about cotton. Always love to talk about soil health, and so we're just going to open the door and go, I guess.
That's right. We're going to talk about everything today. I know it's been a few years since you officially retired, and I say that with air quotes around retired. But I don't think that description is really part of your vocabulary. So, other than what's kind of keeping you busy these days?
Well, staying busy on the farm. I hadn't been too much to the cotton field. I do a little bit of work with the Soil Health Institute, and so we've done a field day or two, and I get a lot of and I get a lot of phone calls from producers and consultants on soil health issues and kind of things that are going on, kind of what to do or what ifs. And so I do that. But here at the farm, we have all kinds of things, and still trying to put up a little hay, and Mother Nature was hard on row crop guys. It was hard on forage guys too. We were way over a month late before we ever put any hay in a round in a in a round bale. So it was crazy. This weather is just crazy.
It's been one of those years, but anyway, and it has been for everybody. But hey, based on your observations and talking to folks around your area, what were weed and insect pressures like in your area over in your state this year? Just ask a curious question.
Well, I hadn't been into cotton field very much. I've talked to
Mhm.
some of my buddies, and we've talked about the crop and being, it wasn't as quite as late planted as what I thought it was going to be, just looking at percent planted and all that. Some of the consultants, some of the farmers I've talked to got their crops in a timely fashion. But
Mhm.
Jim, I was really surprised some of the consultants I visited with that had some really late cotton. We had, and most of our cotton in Arkansas is irrigated. We have a few guys that are dry land, and they kind of took it on the chin. I know I keep up with some farmers in other states here in the mid South that are dry land, and they've had a really tough row to hoe this year. But on the even on the late crop here in Arkansas, the irrigated, it's just unbelievable how fast it grew and come along. It's already cut out. It's got tremendous bow load, and so things have come on there pretty good. I've heard different things on the weed control and some of the herbicide labels and some of the different things going on have given us some challenges, but I never really didn't really get a lot of questions on that this year.
Yeah.
But
Well, like I said, we're going to talk about getting ready for harvest, and I think you mentioned one thing right there off the bat that this overall this crop is still running just a little bit behind schedule when you look
yeah, a
at
little
the
bit.
USDA numbers. And it doesn't matter whether it's Arkansas, Tennessee, Georgia, wherever, everything's still running like a week and a half off schedule. And we are hitting the cutout, pretty much in across the board. Is there still time for a shot or two of PGR for growers if they need to right now? Is that a good idea at this point as we're getting this close to harvest?
Well, the thing that I like to do, and I look at, okay, when is the last possible time a square is going to put money in your pocket?
Right.
And when we get to that point in time, and usually that's kind of toward the end of July,
Uh-huh.
and so we're way past that. But there's a point in time where another square on the plan is not going to make you money,
Right.
and so I really like to try to. You really can't shut it down with methylquat chloride, but you can go a long ways and try to encourage the plant. You can't, you just can't force a cotton plant. Just like, Jim, we can't force our wives to do anything. Yeah, but we can encourage them to do things. So it's kind of like a cotton plant. We can encourage the plant to produce its energy, or to, uh, to, to send its energy to things that are going to make us money, and not waste it on things that are just going to grow more plant, things that won't make it in the basket. So that's a point in time where I really like to try to get with a PGR to try to focus the plant's resources on things that are going to put money in my pocket.
Yeah. And that's the important thing this season for sure.
Yeah, and when we get to this date, uh, we're we're way past that, but certainly, I don't want the plant to waste any energy on things that aren't going to be making me money. So if
Right.
something comes along and is, Jim, the trip across the field costs way more than what goes in the tank.
Mhm.
And and there's a lot of times, maybe not, I don't know about this late, but I know as we get through the season, a lot of farmers, were used to be very reluctant to make just a trip across the field with a plant growth regulator.
Mhm.
And then they found that, hey, even though it doesn't cost much and the trip across the field costs more than what's in the tank, it's making me money. And so you got to look at your situation and figure out where you are, and if and if you need to pull the reins back on that plant to get it focused in the direction you want it to go, well then you got to pull the trigger. But that's something you got to evaluate.
Mhm.
And there's so many tools out there now. And I was introduced like the Chat GPT not long ago. Well, it's been a little over a year ago. And, you can ask it all kinds of questions and things, and it'll help you out. And you just have to figure out how to phrase your questions so that it knows who on the web to look for information from. But there are a lot of resources out there. We got very knowledgeable cotton extension,
Mhm.
or cotton extension specialist, and the Mid South Harvest Aid publications out there. There's a lot of good information to look at.
Yeah. I think I remember hearing something maybe a month or so ago. Some growers were using Chat GPT to get some recommendations on some herbicide applications.
Yeah.
And and unfortunately, they came up with recommendations, but unfortunately, most of them were off label, uh, which a lot of extension weed specialists were very quick to point out.
Yeah.
So
Well, see, that's something, I'll get on and do that. And so there's some things that I agree with very good, and some things that, hey, you can't do this. But, but I know, well, one instance is, okay, when we plant cereal rye for a cover crop and we have Italian ryegrass in the field, what can we do? And I know the weed scientists down at LSU Ag Center have, I think, a really good program on using Zidua and other things on, on their timing after emergence on the cereal rye that you plant and all that. So I just go into ChatGPT as a weed scientist in the LSU Ag Center. So that focuses on where it's looking for information to those weed scientists in LSU Ag Center. What can we do to control uh, Italian ryegrass in a cover crop of cereal rye?
Mhm.
And it gives us some options. But then you can take that. I know my wife teaches at community college, and one of the things that she does is tries to teach the students the right way to use those tools. ChatGPT and others are a tool.
Mhm.
Jim, a crescent wrench is a really good tool, right?
Right, it is.
Yeah, it's not a very good hammer, but you can use
Nope.
it as a hammer.
Mhm.
So, knowing being using your tools the right way is something these kids need to know how to do. And so going in and because it's not gonna give you the final answer, but it's gonna kinda point you in the right direction.
Right.
So you have to put some common just like we've always done, you have to put some common sense to things, because there are farmers would call me, and I know I'm not the only one they call, but, they call around and kinda get a survey of kinda what's going on and try to formulate a game plan that fits them, not what fits Bill Robertson, but what
Right.
fits them.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's kind of move on here. I know we talked about this season getting off to a slow start. We've just come through and probably still are in this really hot, sweltery summer. I don't know if sweltery is a real word or not, but it fits. Uh, Certainly across the eastern part of the Cotton Belt. Is this going to impact defoliation in any way? Just the standard options for defoliation still standing, or what do growers need to do? What do they need to be looking at right now?
Yeah, right now, you know, bowl opening and defoliation
Mhm,
is an active process. And so the plants need to be growing, need to be active to do that.
mhm.
And so, like some of my friends that I follow over in Tennessee, where they've got a burned up crop, the plants aren't very active. So things aren't going to work very good.
Right.
And so, where we've been able to keep on top of things with irrigation, keep the plants active, is going to make a big difference. Now, my weather is showing uh, Thursday. I supposed between Wednesday night and all day Thursday, I'm supposed to get over an inch and a half of rain. And as we move over to Oklahoma, there's some places over there supposed to get like 5 inches of rain. And so we're going to have some, we're going to have some burned up cotton with thick leaves, and right now a lot of it's covered with dust. And so some
Mhm.
farmers I've talked to said, "Bill, we needed kind of a shower to knock some of this dust off the stuff because we got leaves with thick cuticles and it's covered with dust. How are we going to get stuff in the leaves?" But anyway, but we're going to get a shower, and for all the dove hunters, they know usually what happens around the 1st of September. We get a rain and lose all the doves out. But anyway, but looks like we're going to get that rain. Uh, but so we're going to have a little bit of rejuvenation or second wind on the plant. So we're going to have some really tough, hard to get off leaves, and then we're going to have some really tender leaves that will stick easy. So it's all, defoliation's always a challenge. They say it, and I've always thought sometimes it's more of an art than a science, but
Right.
you just kind of have to see what's going on and see what everybody else is doing, and just kind of build on their experiences.
Right. And there are plenty of options out there for growers to use.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I used to never think I could defoliate without death or
Mhm.
foliates. But as we've kind of evolved into things, and when I look, so when we had, you know, look at Delta Pine 1646. That was a good yielding variety, but the thing I liked about it, it had a tremendous fiber package.
Mhm.
You had good grades, and hardly ever had any leaf problems. We've got some brothers now that are good yielders, even maybe even better yielders, but we kind of get into some leaf issues and some other things. And so I've kind of seen where consultants have started using a hormone herbicide based program, especially on the first shot, and then come in with ethicon, which is a plant growth regulator. On the
Right.
first shot, a lot of them are going ethicon and finish, uh, and having really good luck. And but the thing I like about that is on the second shot, they're going in with a product, and one of my favorites is ET.
Mhm.
Is when I look at it, it's a hormone product.
Yeah.
But when we looked at ET as a herbicide, Jim, it wasn't very good, was it? So it was easier on the cotton plant. And so what we want to do, we don't want to kill the cotton plant. We just want to slowly injure it. And so I've talked to Tyson and some of the others. After I retired, I got thinking, and I've come up with all kinds of goofy ideas and challenged Tyson to look at things. I said, okay, in your defoliation work, we usually go in and we look at the leaves, and for me, when I rated defoliation plots, it was a math game
Mhm.
because percent defoliation, percent desiccation, and the percent of the green leaves still on the plant equal to 100. As they can, the leaves are either green on the plant, or they dried up and stuck on the plant, or they fell off.
Right.
Those are the only three fakes that we can have. But a lot of times we don't pay attention to the bracts, and a lot of times the bracts are where we get in trouble with leaf on cotton. And so we need to look at our herbicide programs, and what programs do we put out there that we don't make the bracts so crispy. It's okay to desiccate them, but
Mhm.
still be a little limber. But when we almost kill them and are real harsh on them and they're brittle, that's where we get a lot of our leaf problems on our grapes.
Right.
And so what products can we use? And I'll try to do some of this in the last couple of years and trying to replicate some of that stuff. Because it seemed like when I visited with a lot of consultants, there are some products that they use and they just did not have any leaf problems, even though some of the varieties that they tend to have leaf problems on it. But going a hormone-based herbicide, uh, our hormone defoliation program on the front end, especially, and then a bowl opener and a product. I like the ET better, and I did AIM, but I don't know. You may have to edit some of this up out, Jim. Uh, but but those people hardly had any leaf issues, and so I like doing that, and it worked good. Finish is kind of expensive on the front end, but I tell you what, man, when you use Finish, it works fast. And I really think my experience with Finish on the bowl opening part of that, it opens bowls really fast. If the cotton is green and going hard, I've been a little disappointed in the defoliation, but basically with Finish, if you don't get it in 4 days, you're not going to get it. So instead of having to wait the 5 to 7 days, a lot of times when we did a 2-shot defoliation program, our second shot would come 5 to 7 days later. When I used Finish on the front end, I was putting my follow-up application out 4 days after. So there's 2 or 3 days that you're buying with Finish. So how do you put a price on a day earlier harvest? That's pretty valuable.
Yeah.
So you just kind of have to weigh some of those things out, and it's a timing thing. And I'm busy with a lot of people, and kind of my thought is too, on a defoliation program, the only really option you have for timing is when you start. Because after that, you're just trying to stay ahead of the pictures and not get too far ahead so you don't get a bunch of hard lock and other things like that, having too much opening at the same time when rain comes in. But once you get started, you're just staying in front of the pickers. So you're locked in. You're locked into a schedule. You're just picking the field that are ready to, because on $1 million machine, you got to keep that sucker running, don't you, Gio?
Yes, you do, and that brings me to my next question. We've got these $1 million investments in all this harvesting equipment, and they always generally find the worst time to break down. When but
Murphy's Law.
yeah, Murphy's Law, definitely. What do growers need to be? What has to be happening back in the farm shed right now to get this equipment ready to go?
Well, I think we all do. We all know what we need to do, and I think we all do a pretty good job of doing that. But I'm very OCD on things, and I would plan. I would overdo the planning thing. But when you get in the field and all that, there's things that happen that you had no idea was going to happen.
Right.
And so you just have to be flexible and roll with the flow. But I know, and you kind of get into the lease option or purchase option and what to do. But, I've visited with growers and seen growers that they leased, several machines. And I know when I was growing up, we did the same thing as far as buying multiple. I remember one time we bought some power units to go on irrigation wells. And we had our farm, and then we were renting a couple of other farms, and we needed 3 irrigation motors. So we bought 3 irrigation motors, all exactly the same. And we brought them home. We put 2 on the neighbors' farms that we were renting and 1 on our farm. Well, the ones we put on neighbors, man, it was Oldsmobile 454, and those are some natural gas sucking machines, man. But boy, we could pump the water there right outside of low. But anyway, the 2 that we put on the neighbors, man, run perfect. Ours that we put on our place just was giving us problems all the time. We could hardly ever get it to start, and it was a pain. So a lot of times, I know when these people lease machines, and I've seen some people that go through and print and do the printouts at the end of the year on some of the machines, how many acres they covered and all of this. There's always one machine that just doesn't quite cover as many acres as the others. Just kind of the Murphy's Law, this stuff happens.
Yeah. So basically, it comes down to do whatever you feel like you need to do, get it in tip-top shape up to your specifications, and anticipate that something's gonna happen.
Yeah, because it's going to.
It's going
Yeah.
to. Yeah. Yeah.
When it's new, and I know here on our place, we're kind of coming in on the low end, so I don't have any new paint, and so it's so but it's always going to be something. So,
I don't know if anybody's got any new paint this year, but,
but I certainly baby my stuff around. As you know, the tractor that I use to bale with is a 1978. It's a 1086. I think it's cheap horsepower. I bought it with good money, and the air conditioner works, my lights work, and all that. But man, man, it's not as old as I am. I'm a 1958 year model. But anyway, I treat it like grandpa. I don't
Yeah.
treat it like a young whippersnapper. I treat that thing like grandpa, and it does just fine for me.
Let me change subject here just real quick. Now that we're getting the cotton out of the field, um, I know one of the things that's always on your radar screen is cover crops. Um,
And
what if growers are planning to use cover crops this fall, and more and more growers are using them? And if they haven't already made their crop decisions on that, what words of wisdom do you have for them right now?
yeah, well, like at this point in time, even where I am now, I'm not row crop, but I'm throwing cover crop seed out over my summer annual pastures. I'm looking at trying to figure out, okay, here's what I need to order to make sure that I've got it.
Uh-huh.
And so if you're in the farmers that I worked with for cover crop on cotton, if you're new to cover crops and all that, uh start small, just do a few fields and try to keep it simple.
Mhm.
And I always like to do just to get your feet wet, do a straight seal right. And I know with me here in the hills but with the row crop farmers and all, we 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 don't have enough people. In fact, I know rice guys down here in Jackson County that have combines and trucks sitting in their lot, sitting in their farmyard in the middle of rice harvest because they don't have drivers to drive.
Yeah.
And so labor is real short. So, you know, getting cover crops planted is a challenge. So I like to fly them on.
Mhm.
And on cotton, I've had really good luck flying just straight seal round in front of my first defoliation. The times that I've had a failure is when the ground was really, really dry
Mhm.
and I put the cover crop seed out and got like a quarter of an inch. So it's just enough to get it to germinate, but not enough moisture, soil moisture for the plant to take hold and grow. And so I've gotten to where, and even when I overseed pastures, I want to have some decent soil moisture and then try to broadcast it out in front of another rain. And I always have really good luck with that. But you can start with just straight seal rye because it's if you have a little bit of soil moisture and you get a rain, you're going to get a good stand and it's easy to terminate. A lot of people want to use wheat. Uh, Wheat's better than nothing, but wheat is very difficult to terminate and it doesn't have as extensive of a root system because when I put a cover crop in, I want a good root system. I'm feeding the soil microbes. That's the big thing that I want to do. And so cereal rye does is so much a better job than wheat, even though people may have some wheat seed in the bin and all that. Cereal rye is going to do better. Then as we get into things, we can kind of evolve and kind of grow and look at some NRCS programs and they figure out, okay, I can do this, I can make this work, expand it out on some acres and look at some cost shares with NRCS and look at some multiple species to kind of grow into that program. But on cotton, I want to keep it heavy on grasses.
Mhm.
And so if I'm going to expand that some, I might look at cereal rye. I might look at a blend with triticale in there, which is a wheat and rye cross. And then I like a lagoon. Um, uh, to me, I know some people are have some concerns with doing hairy vetch. I like hairy vetch. I like what hairy vetch brings to the table. but a pound and a half goes a long ways. And so if I'm seeding the cover crops early, like September, October, then no more than a pound and a half. But when I'm getting kind of later into October toward November, I might go a couple pounds. But it doesn't take much, and too much hairy vetch out there will cause you some headaches. But you can go, I think NRCS really likes you to go 3 species. You can go three grass species if you want to.
Sure.
But anyway, but like on a broadleaf crop like cotton, you need to be heavy on grasses on your cover crops. Now, for soybeans, I tell you what, soybeans are so forgiving. Like on cotton, one thing that I tell people, if you're trying to figure out what to plant, the where I like to go sometimes is to start with, okay, how am I going to terminate it?
Mhm.
And so if I'm dead set on wanting to plant my cotton into a green cover crop, then you better have some diversity out there. You better have more than just straight cereal rye, because your carbon nitrogen ratio is going to be so high that soil microbes are going to be starving for nitrogen, and they're going to steal nitrogen away from the cotton plant. And so you need to have some diversity. It's almost like feeding a cow.
Mhm.
You're feeding a cow just really rough hay, just high, you know, really high carbon nitrogen ratio. You'll starve her to death, even though her belly be full. There's not enough nutrition. So when we feed really bad hay, or sorry, hay, we have lick tanks out there, which has molasses for energy,
Mhm.
and it has urea for nitrogen to help feed the microbes that are in her rumen. Just like the bugs in her gut do the same thing as the bugs in the soil. And so we have to help them out if we have poor quality forage. And so my best luck for guys getting into cover crop with cotton is a straight cereal rye. And then when that cereal rye, when the heads start popping the boot, I feel like I have about a 5 to 7 day window in there to terminate my cereal rye. I've got enough biomass with the cereal rye that I can get good erosion control, and from blowing sand, if I have blowing sand issues or whatever we have up here. But I fed, and my roots have fed the soil microbes enough that things are going to be in good shape. But if I let it go to anthesis or blooming or pass or plant my cotton into cereal rye before I terminate it, the cereal rye is so big, there's so much carbon in there, but not enough nitrogen and energy for the soil microbes to do their things, and it hurts the cotton plant. In fact, the Cotton State Support Committee funded research on that several years, and I found anywhere from like a 10 to 15% yield decrease in my cotton when I planted into cereal rye that was past anthesis. So basically, if you plant green. So my bottom line is, okay, if you're dead set on plant green, you need to have some diversity.
Mhm.
If you're going to just terminate your cover crop and plant your cotton, I like terminated just a little bit. When you see those heads start popping the boot, that's a good time to pull the trigger on getting a rig across the field around it to terminate your cereal rye. And that's kind of, that's the sweet spot in there, to where on the cereal rye we have enough good out of the cereal rye to do the help we want with the soil and the soil microbes, but not so much we have hay rake that our planter's going to be a hay rake when it's time to plant. We don't have too much hay out there to mess with trying to get stand. But I tell you what, Jim, on soybeans are so forgiving. If you plant soybeans green into just straight cereal rye, I'm just amazed at what the soybean plants can tolerate and how good they do. Soybeans are so forgiving on that. So, most folks have beans and they have cotton and other things. Now, corn's a grass. So you cannot be heavy on grasses on a grass crop. You have pest issues, you have other things. You need to be higher on your brassicas and your lagoons and stuff like that on corn. But soybeans, you you can you can do things wrong for cotton and still work good for beans. So anyway, I know beans are not the main thing we're talking about. Most people have beans, but But I think that's what we just talked about is a very good program for beans and cotton.
Okay, great. And all of that, of course, dovetails right back into all the soil health programs and things that you are so you spend a lot of time working with Soil Health Institute and other folks on. So it all works together. Getting ready
You know,
for
we-
getting ready for next year's crop.
when I do the cover crops and all that to try to improve soil health, I'm you know, like on cotton, if it's a really dry year and the only thing I'm doing different is plant cover crops, the help that it does on improving soil health, a lot of times I see a 10 to 15% yield increase. But on a wet year, if I'm not doing anything else different, well, I'll see no yield difference, or I might even see yield decrease. Because when we improve soil health, we get better rooting on the cotton plant. I felt like that a lot of times here in Arkansas, I've tripled or quadrupled my effective rooting on the cotton plant. So what that means is I got way too much nitrogen out there. And so I've got cotton that's green as a gourd at the end of the year that I'm wanting to be tired and ready to go to bed, and it's still wanting to go full blast. Like when our grandbabies come to see us, we are outside and we are playing hard because when it's time for them to go to bed, I want them to be tired and ready to go to bed.
Yeah,
So at
because
the end of the
that's
year,
your bedtime at that.
yeah. So at
Yeah.
the end of the year on a cotton plant, cotton, growing cotton is not a sprint; it's a long distance race.
Yeah.
And at the end of a long distance race, you should be tired and you should look tired. And so I want that cotton plant to be tired at the end of a race. So when it's time to put a defoliant on and shut it down, it works.
You want it to be
And
tired
so
and
when you triple or quadruple your effective rooting zone, you got way too much nitrogen out there, then life's not very easy. And so it takes a holistic approach.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to adjust plant populations, we need to adjust nitrogen fertility. And when we there and I'll tell you what, I've learned so much about fertility since I retired from extension than I did while I was there because, there's just so many things you can do. But the interactions with phosphorus in the plant and calcium and all these other things, I don't know, but what maybe we're shooting ourselves in the foot with some of our fertility programs. That's maybe a call for another time. But I think doing that holistic approach, not to improve yield, but to decrease production costs. That's
Yeah.
why I use cover crop and improve soil health is to be able to do things cheaper.
Yeah.
And when we do that, when I get better water use efficiency, I get better use of my nitrogen. I can cut my nitrogen back. I think I can cut other nutrients back, and 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 decreasing my population. Your advertising something like this, when you look at how much it costs to plant an acre of cotton, if we can trim that back a third to 40%, that's real money. That is real money. Because, when I look at population and people ask me how much to plant and all that, I say, okay, the bottom line is when I look at all the row spacing, or not row spacing, but when I look at all the plant population stuff, you need to plant and I'll look at seeding rates, but you need to plant however many seed you need to have between 1 and 1.5 plants per foot of row at harvest. Now, when I do population work and it seemed like it's always kind of worked this way, but when I go about that fifth to sixth true leaf plant, if I go out there and I figure, okay, I have an average of 2.5 plants per foot of row at harvest time, half a plant will be gone. When I go out there and do stand counts and all, there's a lot of times when we pick it, we'll run a shredder, and so it's easy to do stand counts after that. But I'll be about half a plant and foot of row short. So at about that fifth or sixth true leaf, if I'm running 2.5 plants per foot of row, then I end up having about 2 plants per foot of row at harvest.
Yeah.
So you need anywhere from 1 to 1.5 plants per foot of row at harvest. Anything more than that just really doesn't add. But Jim, that is so hard to look at when it's little. Because you look at it and say, I have no stand. It's hard to look at. But it's hard to look at having to have a job in town when you can't pay the bills at the end of the year. When we make record yields and we're having a hard time paying the bills, we got to do something different.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely. Well, I know a lot of growers have been looking at reducing stand this year, as a cost savings. So, we'll see how things work out.
Yeah.
That's once we get all these pickers in the field and get it all out. But Bill, I think we're just going to we need to wrap things up here. I want to thank you for taking time to join us today. It's been great. It really has. Uh, I've got my fingers crossed that we can get this year's crop out of the field and up to the gin without a whole lot of disruption. At this point, knock on wood, we haven't had a whole lot of weather problems at this point. But considering everything else that's impacted the season, a good open fall is going to would make everybody feel a whole lot better.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it as always.
Thank you so much, and holler back whenever need to visit with me about something.
I think I'm sitting here taking notes. I think we got multiple topics to cover as we get, as we head further into the year and into next year. So don't worry,
Yeah.
we'll be knocking on your door again.
'Cause I don't mind sharing my opinion. It may not be right, but but I don't mind sharing it.
That's the beauty of a podcast, man.
There you go. There you go.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
Bill.
you.
Well, all right. That's it for this episode of the Cotton Companion podcast. We want to say thanks again to Bill Robertson for a great discussion and plenty of tips to help finish this crop out and get it to the gin. And we want to say thank you, too, to the American Cotton Shippers Association for their continued support of this podcast. As always, we want to also thank you, dear listener, for joining us for your continuing support. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode. And if you did like what you've heard, please be sure to spread the word and tell your farming friends and neighbors about the Cotton Companion podcast. Here's where and how they can find us.
You can find the Cotton Companion in 3 easy ways. First, go to cottongrower.com/companion or simply click the podcast tab at the top of the homepage. Second, subscribe to our channel on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts these days. And 3, sign up for our weekly e-newsletter, the Cotton Grower e-News, that's delivered to your email inbox every Tuesday morning. You can do that by going to cottongrower.com/subscribe. Also, be sure to follow Cotton Grower on social media. We are at Cotton Grower Mag on Twitter. And on Facebook, you'll find us by searching for Cotton Grower Magazine.
Cotton Companion Podcast is produced by Tyler Hatch and Kim Henderson, our talented colleagues at the world headquarters for Meister Media Worldwide in lovely Willoughby, Ohio. I'm Jim Stednam, East Beck Barnes, and we'll be back with you in a few weeks with another episode of the Cotton Companion. Until then, fingers are crossed for an open harvest, and please stay safe.
'Cause God made me a farmer. Yeah, he works and he works and he works and he works all day. God made a farmer.